We're in an amazing moment in human history that we can actually begin to legitimately talk about modifying aging. There's this person that can regrow limbs. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. But I phoned Mike Levin. He cut off the leg of a frog, and frogs shouldn't regrow their leg. 18 months later, he had a fully functioning leg regrown. It's science fiction becoming science.
There are so many brilliant and well-meaning inventors, chemists that are making progress, but because they don't have the funding for the clinical trials, they can't really prove what they're doing.
The discrepancy between the amount of money that has gone into AI, tech in general, versus the amount of money that's gone into one of the most startling things that we might be able to do, which is to modify how people age. It's got to be 50 to 1. It's sad that this has such a profound effect on the human condition, yet we completely lack capital.
So Greg, tell me about your wild background. I know you worked in emergency medicine, you've done a few things, and now you're one of the top dogs in the longevity technology research space. But I'm always curious how someone arrived to where they are, especially in your case, because it seems like you've done a few things.
Yeah, my poor mother still asks me, what do you do now? I know what you did when you were a doctor. What are you doing now? So emergency room doctor for 10 years, and then decided to make the transition into biotech investing entrepreneur. And because I did math before I did med school, I would start, just looking at the numbers is really compelling. Your chance of having a positive proof of concept on retrospective 8-year study is 30%. And if it's for an unmet clinical need and it's for a large market and it's best in class or first in class, you can deliver an extraordinary return. You get basically about 20 times increase in your number. And so that made sense to me, but you can't do one drug because you have a 70% chance of failure. So we started out with our first company, Metivation, looking for 7 to 10 drugs to try and find that one that would deliver the extraordinary return. And we had the very good fortune of doing it. So that was my slippery slope into that. And then I've subsequently participated in a number of other industries and fields.
What was the wildest thing you ever saw in the emergency room?
Gosh, there's so many. I'm tilting my head back and going over it. The most extraordinary thing is the creativity of people to put an object into an orifice. That still to this day, I marvel at their thought process.
That is hilarious. That requires no further detail. I think we get it. That's funny. Yeah, I often marvel. I'm just fascinated by medical professionals in general that are around that level of gore. Whether it's a surgeon, I've interviewed a neurosurgeon on here a few times, and I'm always going like, what's going through your mind when you cut someone's skull open and expose their brain and start working with it? It's hard for us civilians to imagine just getting acclimated to seeing the inside of human bodies and what happens when they get cut open and so on. It's just fascinating to me.
It was interesting, when you started anatomy, they were very clever. They started with the chest and they already had prepped it by opening it and suturing it back up. And that just doesn't seem to offend you as opposed to, taking the skull off, seeing a brain or anything on the face. So there was a gradual introduction. You see the heart, the lungs. And I think for the professionals, because they do it day in and day out, it becomes more like your place of work than the context that I'm now about to cut into somebody's brain, which obviously would affect how you think about the world and your performance.
Right. So let's talk about longevity, a passion we both share.
Absolutely.
Maybe for some different reasons. From my seat here interviewing so many people in the health and wellness space over the years, it's been coming up on 10 years now. I don't know, 600.
Early adapter.
600 something conversations at this point. And it seems when you get into the really cutting edge longevity stuff that many people have a motivation, to live to these astronomical, ripe old ages. And to me, I think from my own perspective, all the things that I do to support my health are more about just feeling as good as possible for as long as possible. but I'm not so hung up on the duration, you know, you know what I mean? And I wonder, and I wonder, there seems to be a couple camps here. One being, you know, I want to live forever and stay in this body. And then my perspective, not that one's right, but mine's just not really that concerned how long I'm here, but just I don't want to feel like crap while I'm here. I wonder if there's something in one's worldview in terms of your level of confidence in the afterlife, whatever that might mean to you, versus someone who has a very kind of material view of the human experience, and that this body and this lifetime is the only shot I've got. And maybe those people tend to cling to the longevity in terms of how many years, more so than someone who, like myself, has a pretty strong sense that I'm much more than the human body, and the human body is more like a car that I'm driving around for a few years to learn some lessons on Earth School. What's your perspective on, you know, how you've observed different people or yourself approach longevity from that perspective?
One of the things, Luke, I found extraordinary when I was practicing medicine was people had a greater fear of the unknown than even getting a very bad diagnosis. So telling somebody they have cancer, they go, oh, okay, I can deal with that. But not knowing what it was problematic, which I think also speaks to the element of the unknown. I mean, you may believe in the afterlife or spiritualism, or that you're going to join the universe, but we really don't know. So I think that a lot of people are just, I don't know, so let's optimize for the moment. I've been really surprised at people, because when I'm doing a presentation at a conference or public speaking, I ask people 3 questions. Think of it: how long do you want to live under current medical system? They come up with a number. How long would you like to live if you were healthy? Different number. How long would you like to live if I could optimize you so you stayed at age 25 as far as anatomically and physiologically? Most people, it's 3 different numbers. 25, 30% of people still stick with like 85. And I'm done, even if I'm healthy, to which I always say, let's talk when you're 84 and still see if 85 is the number or not. But so I think religion certainly plays a role. You know, it gives people a sense that, okay, if things go bad. And then there's that aspect of health. Am I going to be healthy? And so I subscribe to what you do. It's why Juvenescence, the company we started, was all about increasing how long you stay healthy, which presumably will increase your longevity. But that was way more important than absolute allowing you to live to 120, but you're in a wheelchair or you have Alzheimer's the last 20 years of your life.
Right, right. I mean, that's the thing. There's so many parts about being a protoplasmic being that just wear down. I mean, I think about just mobility and your joints over time, no matter how healthy your heart or your brain is. I mean, there's just the physical structure of the body seems to get worn out, regardless of how healthy your diet might be and things like that, you know? So,
And gravity and sunlight, you know, play a role.
right, right. So, what's the latest and greatest in terms of what you're seeing on the forefront of longevity from the lens that we just sort of highlighted, that it's not about how long you live, but how well you live, and lifespan versus health span and so on. What are you seeing in terms of, you know, exponential progress in the near future that might change things in a way that's meaningful?
We're at an amazing moment in human history that we can actually begin to legitimately talk about modifying aging and your health trajectory. So I think the epigenetics is amazing. You know, if we can reprogram cells back to a younger state, that's extraordinary. I think we're on the brink of sorting that out without inducing cancer. There's a company that we invested in. I was delivering a presentation at a conference. Somebody comes up, there's this person that can regrow limbs at Tufts University. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, give me their number. But I phoned Mike Levin, and lo and behold, he'd cut off the leg of a frog, and frogs shouldn't regrow their leg. And 18 months later, he had a fully functioning leg regrown. He's now done it with a digit on a mouse. Wasn't able to replace the whole digit, but at least the first phalanx. So that's amazing. You know, regrowing limbs, really? Potential to regrow an organ, your organ, you know, not a transplant. So There's so much happening so fast. CRISPR, epigenetics. Hopefully we'll figure out the senolytic story. The one thing I'll say is, having done this now for almost as long as you, the complexity is extraordinary. You know, this dose of that medication optimizes for lifespan. This dose decreases your lifespan. What's good for you is completely different for me. We have the four major pathways that cause your cells to age: AMPK, mTOR, sirtuins, and NAD. They're in a feedback loop. If I increase NAD really high, what does it do to the other three? And so I think until we get quantum computing, this is going to be a bit of a dance that we're not going to master.
What role do you think AI is going to play in terms of a positive contribution?
You mean what DeepMinds is doing is amazing with the proteins. That's going to play an enormous role. Everybody's focused on their genes, but we know there's 20,000 genes. There's 200,000 proteins, and there's millions of metabolomes. So you're going to need AI to sort that out. It's also going to have a profound role in drug clinical trials, drug development. Right now, when my first company had a cancer drug, and we had to wait 18 months to have an interim readout of whether we were seeing overall survival. The AI could have predicted it perhaps in 2 months. Getting our drug on market faster for the patients, enormous savings. So it's going to be quite remarkable, all that AI can do.
All right, listen up. If you're over 35, congratulations. You are officially an adult. You can even run for president, although I don't recommend it. Here's something way more important to note. Your enzyme levels have already started declining, whether you eat clean or not. And enzymes are what break down food into usable protein, fats, carbs, and micronutrients. So if you're noticing a little more bloating, less energy, or you're walking away from meals feeling heavy instead of refueled, it's probably because your digestion just isn't what it used to be. And this, you guys, is why I take Masszymes from Bioptimizers religiously. I'm talking every meal. Masszymes delivers a full spectrum of enzymes, including significantly more protease than other brands. And that really matters because protein is the hardest macronutrient for the body to break down and the one you need more of as you age. Masszymes has become part of my daily ritual for optimized digestion. I take 2 capsules with my biggest meal of the day, and I never feel like I need to recover from eating. Plus, I'm not thinking about food a couple hours later because my body actually got what it needed from what I ate. So to get everything out of the food you eat, head over to bioptimizers.com/Luke and use the code Luke15 to save 15%. If you want to make your meals pay you back in a real nutrition, Masszymes is the way to do it. Again, hit up bioptimizers.com/Luke.
It seems from my perspective that this field has an element of treading water despite the progress, in the sense, there's so many reasons for that, but one, if I zoom out just as a meta perspective of human health in general, we're living in an unprecedented time of toxicity on all levels, from blue light, EMF, to fluoride in the water. We could go on for 2 hours, right? And then nutrient deficiencies. Obviously, we're not eating a Paleolithic, varied diet, right? An omnivore diet that's including all the fat soluble nutrients and minerals and so on. So it's like humans overall are really deficient in what the body needs to thrive and achieve longevity, and also has all of this toxicity working against it. And that seems to be growing at a rate that is also exponential, so it's like there's these advances in science, and which we're going to be talking about, but yet at the same time, we're kind of sicker than ever before. So how do you see, or when do you see that ratio kind of coming into balance, or the longevity and, technological innovations in health moving ahead of the deficit?
Do you know about the study that was done at UCLA in 2018, where they gave people 2 drugs, 3 supplements, and using Horvath's DNA clock, they were able to, within 1 year, knock 2 years off their biological age. So it was Greg Fahey was the and it was growth hormone, which I don't recommend. That's a whole different issue. Metformin, which is one of the drugs that absolutely depends on idiosyncratic, good for you, not good for me. And then zinc, fish oil, and vitamin D3. And that had that profound effect. So that was really fascinating because they were eating a normal diet and exposed to all the toxins you've alluded to. So I think there is a mismatch. We do need to be aware. The number one way to live long is education. Number two is money. So the more people learn, the more that they can take charge of the environmental factors that you've alluded to is going to be a huge thing. Lifestyle is a monster. And it's why at Juvenescence, when we were doing a comprehensive, trying to be the aging company. So whether it was supplements, creating a website where you could learn all these things you could do to modify your age, to conventional drugs, to regeneration of tissues. So I'm more hopeful that we will sort that out and that people will learn what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, the education piece is really important. As someone, when I got into this stuff, there wasn't the word biohacking or anything. You were just a health nut. That's what you called it. You're a health nut. You eat an organic diet and maybe do hyperbaric chambers, whatever was around 28 years ago or so. And then now there's this whole industry around it, which I think is wonderful. But it's been fun for me to observe just the level of public awareness around these kind of issues. When I started out, and talking about EMF, I mean, people would look at me like I was wearing a tinfoil hat, and now there's at least some level of awareness around that. So I think it's been a really positive thing in terms of independent media like mine and many others, podcasts, books, and so on, YouTube channels where social media, this information's getting out in a way that it never has before. I think early on, you would have to be someone who was really faced with some health challenge to start exploring outside of the traditional medical system. And now we're leaning more into a preventative mindset for younger people that are getting interested in this stuff that haven't necessarily hit the wall or have Lyme disease or mold exposure or something like that. They're just looking at the writing on the wall going, hey man, I better pay attention to this now. And thankfully there's so much information out there. But what about the disinformation? And I don't mean disinformation that's anti-pharma disinformation. I mean, in terms of people just wanting to make money selling supplements that are either inferior or in some cases toxic or totally ineffective. There's a lot of obviously bandwagon jumping as public interest grows. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirits out there that are like, ooh, I could make a buck if I put out, a supplement, let's say.
Again, I come from a drug development background. And so when we were looking about how to enter this in 2017, the number one thing that was paramount to me was credibility. And we live in a world that has a crisis of trust. We don't trust government. We don't trust industry. We don't trust doctors anymore. It's profound. So you have to be incredibly credible with whatever you're presenting so you don't compromise that, because the charlatans are huge. Luke, you and I know, and your listeners, you walk into a drugstore anywhere in the world, you're going to see 100 things that say they're anti-aging. And I'll tell you now, they're not. So, to deal with that issue is a big deal. And it's, hopefully, and there's a few people who aspire to it, it would be enormous to have that voice of trust, somebody who is incredibly credible and gave a very measured response. This is what we believe at this point in time. It may turn out to be wrong. There are more clinical studies that need to be done, but this is how we see the world and the health span and this various treatment, whether it's taurine or red light therapy. So enormous that in accolades to Luke, to you, and to the other people who are trying to create that credible link of information and say, this isn't real. Or, by the way, this is a fantastic study, but it needs to be repeated. So yeah, it's a big issue in the area we're in. There was a conference called RAD, and they have a lot of the more fringe therapies. And somebody was selling hot dog water for ketones. So he literally boiled hot dogs, took the water, and was selling it to people. And they were selling some there.
That's hilarious, dude. Well, case in point. I mean, I think one of the services that I do my best to provide the world is to be the lab rat researcher that's really willing to dig into all of these different interventions and technology supplements and so on. I mean, I get approached by brands constantly, and the first thing I do is go to the ingredient list on the supplement bottle, go to the FAQ, look for studies. I mean, I really dig hard to try to poke any holes in it. Then if I feel like it passes the snuff for me to try, if I trust it with my own body, I'll try it out and then see if I got results and then start talking about it, but I think oftentimes people skip a couple of those steps and they just, things get trendy and start kind of making the rounds on social media. And all of a sudden people are making a lot of money. And also people are wasting a lot of money on things that are inevitably expensive as I like to say. So in the realm of research and data and clinical studies, something that's been challenging for me is learning that many studies are not really valid. There's a lot of studies that seem skewed. So when I look at a company's website and go, okay, there's a couple studies, those are impressive. And then I hear, well, only 20% of studies are actually legitimate or whatever it is.
It's 25% of published clinical trials, 75% cannot be repeated by a third-party lab.
What is up with that? I mean, is that just human error, or is there some sort of conspiracy there with people just spending money to produce studies that get the result they want to use for marketing purposes?
I actually, every couple of weeks, I take a variety of clinical trials and articles in popular press, and I actually put out an email and say, this one's credible, this one's not. They didn't do enough people. It's in mice, and mice don't translate to humans, which is a lot of the problem. And then it depends, as you know, you will get a very different answer on your podcast depending on how you pose the question. I can say sit down 5 different ways that will be taken 5 different ways. Sit down. Would you like to sit down? I mean, so I think the same with these trials is how they ask it, what population they pick for the clinical trial, how big is it? So those are the variables. And then when somebody's trying to find out if it's right, that's a whole different study. And by the way, it's the same in drug development. If I only got one product, I'm not asking whether I'm asking a question so I won't fail because my company goes versus the drug, pharmaceutical company wants to kill it as quick as it can and move on to the next drug, which is again why we do 7 to 10 drugs. And the supplements that we have, because of this credibility issue, we have a ketone product. I ran the clinical study. I can tell you if you take it in 15 to 30 minutes, you'll be in ketosis and you'll stay there for 3 to 6 hours.
Our modern life creates a nonstop load on your nervous system. Travel, screens, and chronic overstimulation keep your system stuck in high gear. So even when you finally find the time to rest, your body never fully downshifts. And now with wearables, sleep scores, and constant biometrics, rest itself has turned into another stressful event. That's why I rely on Quantum Upgrade. It's one of the only things I've found that supports my recovery without asking for a damn thing from me, so there's no device, no tracking, and 0 effort. Quantum Upgrade works by harmonizing the energetic environment your body is responding to 24/7. And when that background noise settles, your nervous system finally gets the signal that it's safe to go into repair and restore mode. So your sleep gets deeper, stress drops faster, and you stop feeling smoked for no apparent reason. And my favorite feature is that Quantum Upgrade even harmonizes invisible EMF stress from things like Wi-Fi, cell towers, and modern technology. Sounds cool, right? Well, what's cooler is you can try it for free. Here's what you do. Go to lukestory.com/quantum upgrade and use the code Luke15 to start your 15-day free trial. Because recovery shouldn't feel like another item on your to-do list. So upgrade your field with the Quantum Upgrade trial right now and make recovery effortless again. One more time, here's how you find it. lukestory.com/quantum upgrade. And don't forget to use that code Luke15 to get the free hookup.
Well, side note, and I want to definitely talk about ketosis and ketones further in the conversation, but I'll just say your ketone product is freaking amazing, dude. That was when I figured out you were the guy behind that, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to talk to him because I don't know, you're the first person that's made ketones that work actually edible, which is incredible. But I actually used mine last night because I was like, oh, I'm talking to Greg tomorrow. I should definitely be up on the ketones during the conversation. And it was my last scoop. So that's how I go through it very quickly. But going back to the studies, there's the side of it that we're talking about now is how critical it is that these studies are done and that we have some discernment about the validity we apply to them based on the fact that they're done right or not. The other side of that challenge, as I've seen it, is there are so many brilliant and well-meaning inventors, chemists, and so on that are making progress and innovation, but because they don't have the funding for the clinical trials, they can't really prove what they're doing, right? So you have kind of what's a very logical and I think a needed barrier to entry, which is keeping charlatans out of the space. But then because the trials are so expensive, who can afford to do them if they don't have, a drug company or something like that, right? Where you have the capital to do that. So it's like there are people that are kept out of the space that could be making a meaningful contribution. But, it's a startup. It's some guy in his home lab that figured something out that's really cool and useful. But there's no coin there to really get behind it to prove that it's valid.
The discrepancy between the amount of money that has gone into AI, natural language, tech in general, versus the amount of money that's gone into one of the most startling things we might be able to do, which is to modify how people age. It's got to be 50 to 1. And the giant sucking sound that you heard the last 3 years was all the money, VC money going into AI and LLM. And we had a biotech winner. You got great companies who couldn't get financed. So not only do you have these scientists you've just referred to, and then obviously the current administration has cut off a lot of money to the universities. So that's going to be problematic as well. So yeah, it's sad that this has such a profound effect on the human condition, and yet we completely lack capital. So you're singing to the choir here.
Going back to something you mentioned earlier about the regrowth of limbs, I get this book is referenced so often, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't read it, and that I'm not sure if it was Robert O. Becker or Bob Becker. I think the book is The Bioelectric, where he was using PEMF to regrow salamander tails or something like that. Are you familiar with that? And is there a relationship between the limb growth that you're referring to and the PEMF kind of work that he was doing?
It would be a magnitude of increase in the science from what he was referring to, what Mike Levin is doing, Professor Levin. Basically, when you go from embryo and become a fetus, your cells talk to each other. You're going to become the bone. I'm going to become the muscle, and you don't have a choice. It's literally a signal is sent to you what to do. And what Levin and Kaplan at Tufts have figured out is, let's use a supercomputer to see how they're talking to each other. And they're doing it through electrical impulses, ionomeres. So yes, that would be that I don't, no disrespect to Bob, the primitive application. This is the next generation. And we probably need supercomputers and quantum computing to get to the next level, where I can tell my cells here, if I've had an amputation, to regrow a hand, even as an adult. A 7-year-old child under 7 who cuts off the tip of their finger, it'll regrow. The cells still retain that quality to cause the regrowth. Now we need to figure out what that signal is to translate it so that we can apply it to regrow a kidney or whatever. So it's science fiction becoming science. It's extraordinary. And that's why I said we're living one of the most amazing times for humanity to affect the human experience. Not only the health span, how long you live, but if you've had an injury.
Well, imagine, and I'm sure you have, when we're able to really dial in, say, those specific frequencies that can map and then inform, your knee, what needs to be rebuilt, right? And we're putting that energy into the knee, and then we finally figure out how to get stem cells to stay alive longer and to home into a specific area where they're really needed, right? I mean, I've had a lot of stem cell injections, and some of them have been localized, according to what I want to work on, but you have no way of really knowing if they're going to stick around and do what you want them to do in your knee versus just going systemic or just kind of, uh, becoming senescent and dying like your other cells are, So it's like, I think a lot of these things hopefully are going to converge and start to compound where we can integrate some of these different modalities that are siloed now, and people are doing a lot of research in different areas. But do you think there'll come a time in the near future where some of these modalities will be able to be potentiated by stacking them intelligently?
With respect to the stem cells, so are you aware of the Yamanaka factors? And so the guy named Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize with these factors that will take an adult cell and cause it to basic generate. So I can make a nerve. What Kaplan and Levin are doing is further earlier in the pathway where they can literally not just grow a nerve, they can grow the whole complex organ. And to your point about the stem cells, this is also going to factor in to the degree that we do and don't need them to integrate into the story is going to be fascinating to see. And I don't know the answer. But to your point, we were involved with a stem cell company, and somebody said, it's going to be great. We'll be able to, you got a meniscus tear, we'll inject these stem cells in and the meniscus will grow. But the root cause of osteoarthritis is senolytic cells. So I was talking to Kirkland, Dr. Kirkland, who's at the Mayo Clinic, and he said, we have no idea in an osteoarthritic knee whether 10% of the cells, and for the audience, senolytic means they've stopped functioning and now they're leaking. They're zombie cells that are causing horrible inflammation in your eye, in your brain, or in your knee. And to get rid of them would be fantastic. But Kaplan says, Kirkland said, I don't know what percentage. It could be 50%. Well, if I'm putting that agent into your knee, you're not walking out of my office if I've destroyed 50% of the cells in your knee. And by the way, I then need to flush it to be able to put the stem cells in to hopefully regrow the tissue. So yes, to long-winded answer to could have said yes. Yes, you're right.
I mean, I'm just imagining, I don't know, that we have so many incredible breakthroughs that are promising, but again, they're sort of existing in isolation, and that's what it takes, right? Because in order to determine what it is that's actually having a positive effect, you have to isolate that. I mean, that's the whole premise of doing a controlled study, right? But I'm looking forward to the time when they start to converge and we go, okay, this thing works and this thing works. How can we find a way to put them together synergistically and, really have compound effects? So I guess I'll keep doing things in isolation until someone figures out how to put it all together, because I've got the PMF and I can get stem cells. It's like, it makes sense if we could figure out a way to, help them potentiate the effects of one another. What are some of your personal strategies? Are you doing anything that's super technologically advanced in terms of working with different devices or different treatments and things like that? I mean, you're I don't know how old you are, but you look like a really healthy, fit guy. You seem probably we're on the internet, but I would say you're probably a few years older than I, and you're looking really good.
I'm a lot older than you, I think. The number one thing you can do that we know as far as is lifestyle is fitness. Walter Bortz, who was the head of geriatrics at Stanford, said if you're fit, you mentally and physically decline at 0.5% a year, unfit 2% a year. It's a huge quantum, right? So that's number one. And I noticed that with my peers. If they're fit, same age as me, completely different, they're similar. If they're not, huge difference. Then the next ones are obviously the usual suspects: nutrition, sleep, properly hydrated. So I don't think I'm doing anything. I definitely biohack. I get to talk to the top scientists in the world and ask them what they're thinking and where they go. Are there any that I'm doing that are extraordinary? What I tell myself and others is it safe? And if it's safe and there's some interesting studies, even if it's not fully vetted, then I'm comfortable taking it. And those are the big ones. I do think that the one that I'm probably doing that a lot the other people aren't is rebalancing my hormones to more youthful state. but not in isolation as a package. And everything I do in this area, whether it's supplements or drugs, I want to bring you back to a physiological level when you're 30. I'm not trying to cause a spuriously high level of ketones or a crazy high level of NAD. And similarly with the hormones, I think you want to get that rebalance, the progesterone, the estrogen, the testosterone, all in the right balance. And the other one is rapamycin that I take that is still not ready for prime time. And anyone listening, it's a discussion with your physician because it's a complicated drug and we don't know the right dose.
What about astaxanthin?
I think I would put it in the safe category. Interesting, but I haven't seen enough that I would say absolutely everyone needs to be on astaxanthin. And by the way, the SGLT2 and the GLP-1s are definitely the first anti-aging drugs, not because they affect how you age, but just because they lower your chance of dying of neurological disease, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disease. So they are profound.
With the GLP-1 drugs, have you seen, as I've seen, a lot of sort of, what would you say, like just fear around, people going blind. And I see things on social media about those drugs in general. And I haven't looked that deeply into it because it's not something I'm interested in exploring personally. But there seems to be some downside there, but I don't know how much of it is real because people like to get clicks on their social media posts. And so they say outrageous things, right? But you're framing the GLP-1 drugs as something that could be life enhancing and even promote longevity. Have you seen any validity to the claims in terms of their risks and downsides?
It's got to be, I don't know, it's probably 300-400 million people probably using it by now. I mean, I don't know the number, but it's a staggering number. It's definitely an active drug. Somebody's going to react badly to it unequivocally. The blindness, certainly haven't seen it reported. And there's, we talked about credibility for researchers. A researcher would love to be the one that calls out the GLP-1s and says, oh, by the way, I've now done a meta-analysis and it unequivocally causes blindness, whether it's in this population or that population. It's a diabetes drug. Diabetes affects your ocular system and your ophthalmic system. So what's the disease? What's the drug? I don't think it's for everybody. And it'll be interesting to see when they start microdosing, where that fits in the equation, and the increase in longevity and the decrease in the pathologies. Is that somebody who's a type 2 diabetic who's going to they're at increased risk of those pathologies anyway? Or is it really going to decrease it in the Hollywood actor who's taking, the GLP-1s to look good in their next movie?
All right, you guys, I'm in my 50s at this point, and my hairline just isn't what it was a few years ago. And while I do my best to resist vanity, it's still rough when time takes its toll. So when a brand I love and trust told me they were coming out with a red light cap for hair, my ears perked up. Boncharge's products have been a staple for me for years. I use their blue-free light bulbs religiously when I'm traveling to create circadian-friendly hotel rooms and rentals. And their red light face mask, 10 minutes a day for smoother, healthier skin for doing basically nothing, I'm in. And the red light cap seems to be one of the only ways you can do this naturally. I'm just not into putting toxic or untested treatments on the old dome, you know what I mean? But the idea of using clinically proven 650 nanometer red light definitely caught my attention. Studies show it can help stimulate hair follicles, increase blood flow to the scalp, and support thicker, healthier looking hair over time. And it's also super easy to use. You literally just put on a baseball cap, hit a button, and you're done. It weighs almost nothing, plus it's cordless, so I can literally do a session anytime, anywhere. If you want to give it a try, here's how you find it. Hit up boncharge.com/lifestylist and use the code lifestylist to save yourself 15%. I'm going to tell you what, if this cap delivers the way their other gear has for me, it might be one of the cleanest hair support tools I've ever seen. Again, that link is boncharge.com/lifestylist, boncharge.com/lifestylist, and that code again is also lifestylist.
What role does human connection, social life, family, faith, things like that that are more metaphysical, emotional play into longevity.
It's the number one way to live long, as I said, is education. Number two, money. Number one way to live through 100 is exactly that: connection, a sense of purpose, part of a community, respected. And they play an enormous role. We're seeing, and we're in another crisis or tragedy. To your point about our world, loneliness is, epidemic right now. So yeah, big deal.
I asked that because I've been writing a book about loneliness for the past 2 years, and
Good for you.
about to turn my final revisions in after a very long and arduous journey. Funny thing I've noticed, have you done any writing, like long form writing?
I'm just about to write a book on investing in longevity in biotech, because to circle back to something you say about the money to fund the researchers who found something profound. The number of times I've heard I can't invest because I don't have an MD or a PhD in biotech, and Warren Buffett says you shouldn't invest unless you understand the sector. To which I say, have you bought shares of NVIDIA? Well, yes, I have. Give me a brief rundown on how the Blackwell chip works.
Right.
The same thing, you want to find trusted, respected people to be able to do this. And so I think that, circling back, that's a big deal in how the world thinks about these things. And we got to get the money in to address it. We definitely need to address mental health, particularly if we do increase how long people are living, because they're going to have a greater chance of loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I found this persistent irony in writing. That's why I asked, if you've done some writing, and you'll know this as you write your book, which I'm looking forward to.
It's slow.
It's it's such a solitary creative expression.
And rereading what you've just read to see the next stake. It's so I've got to use my ketones to stay alert and function.
Totally. But yeah, it's one of these things. I mean, I guess there's a lot of artistic expression. I mean, if you're painting a painting, you're not usually doing it in a collaborative way. But it's been funny for me writing a book about loneliness and realizing the very process of creating it has been so isolating because it's like no one understands what you're doing. It's been 2 years. How you doing, Luke? Can you come hang out? I'm like, the book. It's just. It's a funny.
Well, good on you. It's certainly something that's needed. When you've tried our ketones, what has been your experience? What do you feel? And when you took it last night, were you able to fall asleep immediately afterwards? Had you wanted to?
Yeah, I think it's improved my sleep. If anything, I pay a lot of attention to my sleep hygiene. I mean, it's one of the things I'm always kind of doing trial and error and experimenting around a lot. One of the things that I've noticed that is sometimes detrimental to my sleep is if I don't eat enough throughout the day, which is pretty common for me because I'm just not really interested in food in general. But if I go to bed and I haven't eaten a lot, I'll wake up with the cortisol spike in the middle of the night and be totally amped, right? So I keep a jar of honey next to the bed, and I'll take a teaspoon of honey, and that usually, gets the glucose back in order and helps me fall asleep. But I find with the ketones, even if I haven't eaten a lot of food in terms of calories, I've got fuel to do what the brain and body are trying to do throughout, the process of sleeping. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's such like the coolest thing about ketones and the way that you've done it, as I said, because they're actually edible, is that I try to explain it to people. What does it feel like? And what gives you energy? And I think people think of energy like something that's very stimulating, like caffeine or various nootropics. And ketones are, speaking to your ketone product, are not stimulating at all. Like they don't seem to have an effect on the nervous system in terms of amping you up. It's the kind of energy, I explain it like you're really tired and you just had a great nap and you wake up and you're refreshed and you have energy, but it's not like you can't focus and you're shaky and, tweaked out like you would be from taking stimulants, So I freaking love it. And that, you guys have, like I said, cracked the code, and I don't know how you did it, but I think the one I was using last night, I had a couple bags of your product. The one I was using last night was the coffee creamer, but I just made it into a smoothie, because I didn't want to drink coffee at night. But I mean, I could just put it in water and it's like barely has a flavor, which is pretty incredible. But before that, I haven't done a show on, keto diet and ketosis and stuff for a long time. I think because I became so disillusioned with how trendy it became. And I tried the keto diet a couple times many years ago when it first started hitting the scene. And I mean, it was just impossible. Like it was impossible to not eat carbs because it's like everything except a steak has carbs, So I just found it to be problematic from that perspective. And I like carbs. I mean, I like to eat blueberries and honey and, sometimes, well, let me be honest, a lot of the time, ice cream and things like that. So let's just kind of do a 101 on ketosis and ketones for people that have maybe heard the word or experimented with it like I have and, gave up on it because it was so difficult or they just didn't feel well.
So ketones are related to acetone, which is nail polish remover. So you can imagine the work that had to go into it so that Luke could enjoy it in a glass of water without the colorful things that people say about ketones online. So there's two ways to go into ketosis. One is Luke and I don't eat for the next 36 hours, and we break down all the sugar in our muscles and our liver. And then we have to turn to get our energy source from our fats. We start digesting the fat, and it turns into ketone bodies. Goes to the liver, turns into something called BHB. BHB can replace glucose or sugar as an energy source for the cells in your body. The cells in your body are better served if they're using ketones than if they're using sugar, as we've all learned too much about the effects of sugar. A lot of people say that the heart prefers the ketones. So if I have French toast and I took our product QI-tone, you'll get high sugar, but you also have high ketones. The sugar, unfortunately, is used by the brain, the ketones by your heart. So that's one way is we stop eating and we go into ketosis, which has a couple of effects. One is we know that fasting does seem to play a role in energy preservation of your cells. And so that's a good part. And the second thing is the ketones are better for a lot of your cells. Scientists began to explore, and the one we got is from a place called the Buck Institute, which is 200 of the top scientists in the world trying to solve aging in Northern California. And we know that I don't have to starve myself to go into ketosis. I can simply take ketone esters are better than ketone salts, I think. Most of the research will probably substantiate that. And I will go into ketosis. And I said, 50 to 30 minutes after taking our product, you'll be in ketosis. You'll stay there for 3 to 6 hours. And so that will put you into ketosis, but you can still eat a normal diet. But now you'll get the good benefits, which is ketones will be used by your cell, but you won't get the added benefit of the fact that you're fasting. Other than ketones do actually, if you take it in the morning, you don't feel hungry for quite some period of time. So why is there's 1,000 studies that talk about why being in ketosis, either through starvation or through or diet or a ketone diet, as Luke said, or taking this an endogenous ketone supplement that you take, why those are good for your heart, for your brain, for your liver. It's just tremendous. So. And University of California, Davis did a study and found that mammals that are regularly in ketosis live 13% longer, which would be 10 years if it translated to humans, and it may or may not. So, yeah, we're looking at it both as a supplement, but also as a drug for heart conditions and also to protect the brain in the case of trauma. It's quite an extraordinary product, and it's a food. It's safe. It's used by 3 of the teams in the Tour de France after they've ridden the bike to speed the recovery before they have to go out and run another 200 miles the next day.
That might explain the positive effects on sleep, because it's a similar kind of thing, right? I mean, obviously that's the time when the body recovers. And so if it's got the energy to do that recovering while you're sleeping, that's going to, obviously have an effect on how you feel when you wake up. I forgot about the appetite suppressant. part of it because, as I said, I don't have a lot of appetite. I chew coca leaf all day long, which is terrible. I mean, it's great for mental focus, but it's terrible for appetite. So taking your ketones might be part of the puzzle as to why my wife's like, dude, you need to eat. You never eat. She's constant.
It's a small effect. And we don't usually eat because we're hungry. We eat because it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock at night. And most people, when they take ketones, to what you described, is they talk about being very mentally acutely aware and just feeling refreshed, having more energy without the jitteriness. I loved it because if I'm tired and I'm jet lagged, I can take it to go out to do whatever I need to do, have dinner, see friends, and I can fall asleep 10 minutes later. Because it's not like caffeine where I would never be able to immediately fall asleep afterwards, or Red Bull or any of the other stimulants. So that's what's really intriguing. And we designed it specifically so you could put it into a coffee. You could put it into water. We're talking to a group about doing replacing alcohol in some alcoholic drinks with the ketones. So you get a bit of a buzz without the alcohol. And we designed it that way. So anybody who wants to build a brand, please reach out to us. We'd love to work with you.
That's funny. I've heard over the years people talking about certain doses or certain types of ketones, giving them that sort of GABA heavy social lubricant feeling of a drink or two. You're saying that that's a reality or that's possible?
I would say 66% of people talk about the mental acuity and the refresh of energy. But generally, it's just people, it's a pleasurable feeling to feel something like that. I don't think it's going to, replace the social lubricant of alcohol, but it does play a bit of a role in making it a more enjoyable evening. And you can fall asleep.
Got it. So the thing I didn't realize until now, I'm starting to put the pieces together, is taking this ketone product actually puts you in ketosis.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I just thought, I'm just giving my body ketones to use as fuel, but I guess I didn't realize that
this is very important.
Part of that equation.
One of the things along with rectifying the taste is, and the reason we can't sell it in a capsule, it has to be a powder, is I can give you 12.5 milligrams. I can give you 25 milligrams to drive you not only into moderate ketosis, to drive you into full ketosis. And that's unique, A, because it tastes okay, and B, because we designed it so you could take a large dose safely to moderate your ketosis. And there's devices you can prick your fingers so you know exactly how much you're doing. When I take 25 milligrams, I literally go to do like 2.0, 2.1, and 0.5 to 1.5 is the usual range of ketosis.
Wow. Would that also be true if one were, mixing it with carbohydrates? Like, let's say I make a blueberry smoothie that's got some sugar and carbs in it and so on, and I'm adding the ketones to that. Does that negate the impact of ketosis?
No, on the contrary. Third-party research, not us, and it has been repeated. On my criteria, you have to repeat it. Basically, if you take ketones, it actually lowers the sugar in your blood. There's a bit of an offset. I don't know if I'll throw this one out because it was just such a fun study. This is 2 years ago almost. If you have bananas in your berries, the bananas will destroy 80% of the active ingredients and phenols in the berries. Same thing that turns a banana brown is a phenol oxidase, which destroys the nutrients in the berries.
No way. Oh, man.
I've gotten hate mail on this one, Luke, from people. You've destroyed my breakfast. How dare you?
Don't tell Jamba Juice. Those like the mainstream smoothie joints are going to go out of business. Well, thankfully, I don't put bananas in my smoothie, but I love some berries. That's like the one. Yeah, it's the one fruit I like. There's a company called Northwest Wild Foods, no affiliation, but they sell incredible wild berries, like all different varieties of wild berries, from the Northwest, and great wild fish too, by the way. So shout out to that company. But yeah, they have these incredible, blueberries, obviously, but a number of other berries. And they're just, wild berries are different. There's more pigment in them. They're more tart. They're less sweet. They really they hit like medicine. Obviously they're tasty, but you're going like, my body really goes, more of this. This is real food. And the chances of me going out and gathering enough berries to sustain myself in Texas is very unlikely. So yeah, I like that, but I'm always kind of monitoring my sugar intake. So it's good to know that there's a bit of a hack there with the ketones where maybe I won't get so much of a glucose spike if I choose to indulge in some, carbs and sugar like that.
You can have French toast with the ketone ester. Your sugar will go high, but so will your ketones. Stephen Haggerty at Harvard did a study showing that blueberry skins in particular seem to be neuroprotective. So they're probably one of the better fruits. And I take them every day because of that as well. There's a lot of things I take every day because of the nutrient value of them. But no, very excited. I'm glad you had the positive experience with the ketones and glad that we're in a position to put it into a variety of products. And you can, as I said, put a very large dose in, which is important.
Amazing. I'm going to let people know too. I highly recommend. I wouldn't shout out your website if it wasn't something I was really into, by the way. If you go to lukestory.com/get ketone, that's GETQITONE. And I'll also put that link in the show description. And there's a discount code of Luke10 there. I think it's like such a great, I don't know. It's a great tool. And it also it seems more natural than a lot of the synthetic supplements and things like that. And I take tons of that stuff too. I have no problem with something that's synthesized. But as you referred to it earlier, this is a food, which is, it's in a different category, right? It's like a food supplement versus just a supplement. And so
Foodceutical. They've nicknamed this area or nutraceuticals.
Did you know that one of the most intriguing forms of plant medicine doesn't require a shaman or a trip to the Amazon? I'm talking about flower essences, solar infusions that carry the bioenergetic imprint of a plant's life force. And the formulas from Lotus Way have changed how I approach my day-to-day spiritual practice and how I integrate big insights from ceremony or other deep dive healing experiences. Lotus Way founder and flower alchemist Katie Hess hand collects rare blooms and crafts them into blends designed to shift specific emotional and energetic patterns. And Lotus Way just launched something special, the Wild Earth Orchid Elixir. If you've been feeling a little stagnant, worrying too much, and maybe dancing too little, this might be the medicine you need. It supports physical freedom of movement and lights the spark of connection. It's a call to feel alive in your body again. To get into it, here's what you do. Visit lotusway.com/Luke and let their master flower quiz guide you to the flowers that support you best. Once you've done that, use the code Luke to save 10% off your first order. That's lotusway.com/Luke, LOTUSWEI. Oh, and heads up, Lotus Way just released an amazing docuseries on YouTube called Flower Hunters. It's the first time they've ever shown how the formulas are gathered and created, and it's really beautiful and inspiring, so definitely check that out. And again, the site is lotusway.com/Luke, and don't forget that code Luke.
what about the value of ketones for young kids and for elderly? We're two people talking that are in pretty good health and thriving as far as I can tell. But, what about during the period of growth, for young kids or babies or, the elderly people that are starting to have cognitive decline and so on? What about the two ends of the spectrum in terms of age range?
With young children, I have not, because there's the body and the way we are structured is so optimized for growth and in every form. I haven't seen anything where it materially changes other than the fact that it mitigates some of the effect of sugar, which kids eat too much of, and it may decrease their appetite a little bit, which again, in our culture is probably not a bad thing. We do have a product, which is our next product that we're bringing out. I don't know if you've followed the spermidine story and autophagy. So we, with Jens Nielsen out of the University of Copenhagen, have made a 98% pure spermidine, which interestingly, third-party research, again, not ours, given to children, accelerates their given to neonates, accelerates their neuronal development to the point where we're literally talking to people about putting it in infant formula. So on that end, that's compelling. Regarding the ketones in the elderly, my team will tell you that we probably get an email a week from a caregiver who says, Mr. or Mrs. Johnson has Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, some neurological condition, and literally it just changes how they react. I mean, it's just profound, which is intriguing. We definitely want to do a deep dive as drug developers and scientists, physician scientists, into this effect, but it does seem to have a profound effect. Hyperactive children, we've noticed a huge impact of the ketones in them. So your brain's 2% of your body mass. It consumes 20% of your energy. This is a fantastic energy source, an optimized energy source. So it makes sense in somebody who's got Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, any form of dementia, or somebody who's got a hyperactive brain, that this may play a profound role. So I'm excited to see the next set of studies that are coming out on this, and particularly the elderly. And I think we're going to probably make a formula for the elderly, which will not only have the ketone, but some other things that will optimize their path.
Awesome. Yeah. Spermidine is one, there's so many different kind of molecules that hit the scene, and there's a lot of hype about them. That's one I've had a lot of personal success with. In particular, there was one point at which we were trying to conceive a couple years ago, and I had my sperm tested just because my wife was like, "Hey, you should get checked." And I thought, I don't need to do that. I'm super healthy. Yeah. And then I realized that I'd been taking saunas forever, and saunas aren't great. So anyway, I got it tested, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It was just in the toilet, and figuratively speaking, and yeah. So I just thought, well, sperm, and I just started megadosing spermidine. And within 2 months, it was back to, you're 18 again. It was incredible. Again, that's just
its role in autophagy, the junk that is created by our cells that we clean up when we're young and we can't clean up. It also affects your skin, the aging of your skin and your hair, as well as your organs. So it's one of the few that you'll see an aesthetic effect with. The unfortunate thing is the spermidine on the market is about 5% pure. It decays very quickly, which is, one of the things, again, much like getting rid of the nasty taste for the ketones, we've optimized that in our products so that it's so pure because it's being manufactured from yeast as opposed to being extracted from shrimp and natural products.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the other
we can get you some to try it out.
Let's roll, man. The other way to get spermidine is the Japanese fermented soybeans, natto. Which is, I like natto myself. I'm a weirdo, but no matter who I've lived with or been around, the minute you crack open a jar of natto in the kitchen, like the whole house smells like rotten feet, and everyone's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "I'm eating that thing you smell." So it's not accessible.
I'm probably not coming to your house for dinner. No disrespect, Luke. A, you don't sound like you have dinner. And B,
True.
And B, we have that lovely. No, it's on the contrary. Hopefully, we get to break bread.
I agree. What about urolithin A? That one to me seems to hold a lot of promise in terms of mitophagy, in a the other side of the equation of what we're getting from senescence.
Yeah.
Do you think urolithin A? Have you seen research or observational opinion on that's the efficacy of that?
I've literally started taking it. There's one on Amazon. I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention the name or not.
Oh, it's fine, just fine. Yeah, I take one from a company called Timeline.
Same. I met with the founder scientists in the last few months. And I did like you did, like exactly what you said. We went in, I asked for the clinical papers. I had them send me the research. I went through the research. And at the end of that, this actually, I think it's a weak positive, but I think it's a positive. It's not robust and we need to optimize for it as well. But I do think it does sound like positive for us in the mitophagy area.
Yeah. Okay, cool. It seems a lot easier than trying to eat 47 pomegranates a day, That's the thing. I mean, I think we hear about, we're talking about blueberries and different foods that have these great, polyphenols and cofactor nutrients and so on. It's like, well, yeah, but who has the ability to eat the bulk that you would need to get a clinical dose? And so something like urolithin A, spermidine, I'm excited about, innovation with compounds like that work and they're validated. We just need more of it in the body to really move the needle.
100%. Totally agree. And then that's, key what we try to do, when we're working on products.
Cool. So I feel like there was something with the ketones. Oh yeah. With the ketogenic diet, as I said, I've tried and failed because it's just so freaking hard. A lot of people seem to get results with it and they're able to do it for whatever their constitution allows them to. But then you get, sort of side effects like ketone flu, sleep issues with cortisol, hormonal balance and things like that. I mean, despite knowing that ketosis is overall good for us, what are some of the downsides if people aren't doing it right or just kind of haphazardly taking it on as a lifestyle choice?
So there's a good gentleman, Eric Ferdinand and John Newman are the ones who created our ketone at the Buck Institute that I mentioned. The amazing facility, $38 million philanthropic budget, just trying to find great things for us. To your point about scientists, and 200 scientists from all over the world work on it. And when I saw the ketone research, and he told me I had the ketone ester product, which we in-licensed from them in 2018, I said, I should start on a ketone diet. And Eric goes, as long as you can live on avocados and macadamia nuts, have at it, Greg. But, one apple, one, blueberry, and your pooch for the next 36 hours. So and Scott Simpson, who's at the Perkins Institute, which is a multidisciplinary institute in Australia working to look at aging as well, says that the optimum diet for all mammals, which he believes will also be the optimum diet for adults, for humans, is 70% healthy carbs, 15 to 20% healthy protein, and 10% healthy fats. And he said the worst diet is 70% bad carbs, and bad protein and bad fats. So I think that the ketone diet's intriguing, but there's so many nutrients you will miss unless you're really savvy. Same with, being a vegetarian. You really have to know what you're doing to make sure you get the essential amino acids at the same meal, and everything else that goes with it. Although it's a fantastic diet, I'm not knocking it. You better know what you're doing, though.
Yeah, I agree. When I was a vegetarian, I did not know what I was doing, and I did myself a great disservice trying to, really embrace my humanity and compassion at my own peril, unfortunately. What about, you were talking about some of the, the aging pathways before. Do you know anything about the clotho protein or the clotho?
Tried to license one.
Has anyone made any progress with that? Because I remember years ago, this is probably going back 10 years ago, I was getting this probiotic strain and making kefir from it and yogurt from it, right? And it touted at least that it was enabling your body to produce the clotho. It wasn't the clotho itself, but kind of a signaling molecule sort of thing. And the company, I think, just evaporated at some point. But I liked eating the yogurt and making the yogurt, and I hoped that it was working. But then I haven't really heard anything about the clotho space, if you will, since then.
I tried to in-license a clotho product out of Yale University, but the scientist decided he wanted to bring it forward himself. That was probably 4 years ago, maybe 5. There's a number of other people, and for the audience, clotho plays a very dramatic role in how we use energy, preservation of cells. So I think we will see things in the next 3 to 4 years. And I don't think they're necessarily, they're probably going to be pharmaceuticals. So I'm not sure they're going to, be available to us in 3 to 4 years, but at least they'll be on the road to making products.
Cool. Going back to ketosis and the benefits of that, I've interviewed a number of people around the topic of deuterium, this heavy hydrogen, right, that builds up in the body over time. And a couple of the foremost experts on deuterium that I've interviewed seem to hold the perspective that one of the, if not the main benefits of ketosis is that it encourages your body to start depleting deuterium. and the cancer research around the one of the doctors, Dr. Q Collins, who's an immunologist out of UCLA. This is a number of years ago. He did a study with dogs and cancer, and basically by introducing a ketogenic diet to these dogs, cured an insane number of them of cancer. And his study around that led him to believe that the reason that the ketogenic diet worked for those dogs with cancer had a lot to do with the depletion of deuterium. Have you looked into that relationship at all?
I haven't. As you were saying it, I was trying to think of a mechanism or a pathway that would do it. Certainly, if he was keeping them not only on a ketogenic diet, but he was also diminishing the amount of food they have, so they were breaking down their fat. I'm not sure if deuterium is stored in the fat and then gradually released into the body as a toxin, in which case it may have more to do with fasting than it had to do with the diet. But that's just the totally off the cuff here. So feel free to edit this part out.
No, I don't know the answer either. I'd have to go back and listen to the interview, but it did have something to do with, I remember one of them telling me a story about camels and how the fat in the camel's hump, all fat, saturated fat is depleted in deuterium. It's very low deuterium. And so the fat in a camel's hump actually produces metabolic water. And that's how they're able to go such long expanses of time without, using exogenous water, without drinking water. Is really interesting. So there definitely was a relationship there that I can't really articulate, but it stuck in my mind. And that was so many years ago. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. The relationship between having good saturated fat and a keto diet, depleting your deuterium, because the only other way to really get your deuterium levels down, if you're not full keto, is drinking deuterium depleted water, which I do when I can afford it, but it's exceedingly expensive. And so I'm wondering if, and obviously you wouldn't know the answer to this or make the claim, but I'm wondering if there's a relationship between exogenous ketones and that same mechanism of action where it's giving your body what it needs in order to better deplete its own deuterium levels. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely fascinating to explore.
That'd be a cool experiment to go on the hardcore deuterium depleted water, take an adequate, if not excessive amount of your ketone product every day, and then retest your deuterium levels, which you can do down the road and see what happens. I'm going to do the experiment for you. I will report back.
I would do 3 arms. One, I would do it just on the water, see what that does. 2, I would do it just on the ketone, and 3, I would do it on the combination. And then you may have hit the magic bullet.
I'm in. All right, man. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been super fun. It's been a while since I've done an episode where I get to really geek out on the health stuff. I talk to all kinds of people about different things these days as my interests kind of change. And I wonder, am I still into the health stuff? And I talk to someone like you. I'm like, yeah, I still got it. I'm still passionate about this particular topic. So in closing, I'm going to ask you my classic final question, and that is, who are 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced your life, your work, who you are, and what you do?
Far and away, number 1 was my mother. I'm the only child of a single mother, and I, as well as doing emergency medicine, I did 3 years where I was a forensic psychotherapist, and as I was talking to the patients and trying to, guide them, I realized how many times I was quoting my mother, how she thought about life, and still to this day would quote her. And then it's been a smattering of people as opposed to one, Luke. Try to grab something from everybody I interact with. If this was reversed and I was interviewing you, I'd be asking you, what's the biggest epiphany you've had in your life? What are you going to do to change the world? And try to, and learn from that. And I collect quotes, which also seem to guide me.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
I have one for you.
Yeah.
What's the biggest epiphany you've had in the last few years?
I would say that it is safe to be vulnerable enough to love deeply.
Interesting. Good for you. Transformational.
And also, I think most recently, how critical self-love is in one's quality of life, and how I have a lot of work to do in that area still, after all the work I've been doing on myself for all these years, you know? So yeah, I think my epiphanies tend to be more in the kind of metaphysical realm, and they usually lead back to the same principle of love in one way or another. Just that, that's all there really is. That's all that really matters ultimately. You know what I mean? It's like, even the way I look at longevity, it's like, why would I want to stay here? Because I want to learn how to further explore this field, this energy, this aspect of the creator that we call love. It's like, how much more of that can I have and give and experience here? Because it seems like, as the older I get, that's kind of what this game is about, is, can you exist? It's like, can you exist in a world with so much evil and still embody love? That's a pretty good challenge. You know what I mean? It's like,
Particularly these days.
yeah, I'm like, okay, that's worthy of effort,
Well, thank you for your answer, and I hope we can be able to do this podcast in 50 years.
Yeah, me
Because
too, Greg.
we won the game.
Me too, brother. I appreciate you.
Cheers, Luke, and thank you.
All right, you guys, before I let you go, I want to drop a reminder about one of the most fun ways to support the show. It's the official Luke Story merch collection, where every design is handpicked to reflect the lifestyle, the humor, and the mission behind this podcast. We've got classics over there like Meditation is My Medication, or Chemtrails Are Not Comtrails, plus newer hits like Microdoser and Conspiracy Analyst. So whether you're repping the freedom vibe, psychedelic credentials, or just want to start a fun conversation, it's all there. And each design is available in a grip of colors, even tie-dye, with sizes and styles for men, women, and even kids too. And of course, all the t-shirts are available in 100% cotton. So grab your favorite smartass design on a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or cap, or even a to-go cup for your favorite drink. And here is the link, drum roll please, lukestorymerch.com. Find your favorite design, scoop one up, and rock it proudly. Because these aren't just shirts and hats, you guys, they're signals. Little badges that say you're part of the tribe that values truth, style, and living outside of the matrix. You can check out the entire collection at lukestorymerch.com. Load up on the new drops and show the world what you stand for.